Here is the next step in building your 3D model. For this step, you're going to need tacky glue, tape, a pencil, an eraser, your elevations. Here we are. Elevations. Your Bristol paper, scissors, a ruler, and you're also going to need your board that you taped your floor plan to. Alright, so when you're going to create your outside walls, what you need to do is you're going to create them in a couple of phases. So you're going to choose like two sides of your house, and you're going to do them at the same time if you can. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow for you to be able to bend them because a paper in an L shape stands up better than a paper that is just by itself. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut a really long strip that is the height of the walls of my house. All right, because this is a really long piece, I'm going to measure my floor plan, or my elevations, and the height of my wall here is going to be the height of the piece of paper I'm cutting out. So it is going to be a total of 5 inches tall. I'm going to do, for this one, I'm going to do my back wall and then my side here. So for my piece, I'm going to go 5 inches, and I'm going to measure it in multiple spots. Because my ruler is not longer than my paper. Now, if you've got a big, long ruler, it's going to be a little bit easier for you. Or if we were in class, we'd have the paper cutter, and then this would go much faster. After tracing your line, you're going to cut out the first side. You might need to do this a couple of times for all of your sides. For now, I'm just going to start and kind of measure out where all of my doors are. I'm marking from my floor plan where all of my doors and windows are on the wall. I'm imagining this is my back wall and then this is my side wall. So I'm imagining this standing up here and then coming sideways. So what I'm going to do is I'm measuring out and putting in where my windows are. So for my windows and doors, I can look at, if you did elevations for that side of the house, that's where you can kind of see where that is. So if I look here, like here would be my elevation for the back. If you don't have elevations for that side of the house, that's where you get to kind of be creative and come up with that. So if I'm turning it like this, what I'm looking at here is my doors need to be about 7 feet tall. They can be 7 feet tall with a, without my bottom here. So I don't need to consider the foundation of the house when I'm building this. It's just a little bit easier to not think about it that way. So I've got windows here and doors. I'm actually going to draw them on here so that I can cut them out before I glue this to my base. For my doors, I'm lining it up with my grid paper so I can make sure all of my lines are straight, and then I'm drawing a line through the center of my double doors. I'm essentially drawing out the doors on the outside so that I can see where I need to make cuts and scores. And there we go. So I've got the start to my doors. The first cut I'm going to make is going to be between the two doors, cutting out where the doors need to open. So in this case, all of my doors need to open either in the middle or on one side. So I've got that middle opening, and then along the top here. And then they swing inside, which means that they need to bend inside. So I'm actually going to score the outside. It's called scoring, which means I'm running my scissors really lightly along my lines here. And I'm not trying to cut out my doors. I'm actually just trying to get them to swing and bend inward here. So I scored along that line, and now I have 2 doors that swing. So that's kind of how you're going to approach your doors for each area. So I have a door here, I would need to approach that the same way. Now for my windows, all you need to do is actually cut those out. So what you're going to be doing is drawing in your windows. Now each window needs to be at least 1 foot from the floor. I would say typically they're 2 to 3 feet from the floor. So for this one, my windows, I'm making the bottom of my windows 2 feet from the floor. You can make them at any height that you want as long as they look good. Now I get to decide, I'm going to have them about 2 feet from the ceiling. So between this, and I know I have 9-foot ceilings, so I have 2 feet here. But if I go up 9 feet, your windows should be 1 to 2 feet from the ceiling. So I'm going up to my ceiling height and measuring down 2 feet to give myself room for trim and curtain rods above my ceiling. And then I'm just drawing in the full window. All right, so now I have this window here. And one thing I can do is I can either leave it, and you can let me know if you're not able, if you don't have sharp enough scissors to cut out your windows. But one thing you can do, you can use an X-Acto knife, but I find it actually is fine to just poke your scissors through. And you'll have to be kind of careful. And you're creating a sort of cut. I would cut through in 4 spots to just make sure you're not tearing other parts of your paper. These cuts make it easier for you to cut your window fully out. If you are not able to cut out your windows, I will ask that you draw in your window panes and your trim to give it a little bit more detail, since you won't be cutting them out. And there we go. You've got a functioning window, and then you've also got functioning doors. And it should line up with your floor plan. Now you're going to do that to the rest of your doors all the way across. When you're ready to actually stand it up and attach it, what you're going to need to do is you're going to line it up here, and you're going to mark where your wall changes direction. I'm measuring and using a straight edge for this part so that I can make sure that I have a straight line that's even so that it stands up straight. Now, because it needs to bend this way, I'm actually going to draw my line on the outside because that's where my scoring needs to be. Your scoring will always be on the outside of the bend so that it kind of creates that area. So it's a little under 6 inches from here. I'm measuring and tracing out that line with my straight edge, and then I'm going to score it with a pair of scissors and slightly bend it. And I'm going to bend it, and there we go. Now I have it ready to be glued into its spot. I don't have all of my windows and doors cut out because I don't want to make you watch me do all of that, but you should have them all cut out before you start the next step. Now, if you have, let's say you've got an area here where you have an area that's bumping out. So if you've got, like on the front here, you can see on my floor plan that it bumps out here and here and here. Each of these is going to be a score mark that goes all the way up. And that is going to make it a little bit easier for me to bend that so that it fits. For example, this is actually part of the front of my house, and I have scored it, and I have right here I have a score on the inside so that it bends this way. So you can see here that the 2 scores allow it to have that L-shaped bend, and that's what you'll do for any areas that stick out. Now, when I'm talking about cutting out your doors and windows, I'm not just talking about the main floor. You also need to cut out the doors and windows for your second floor. So that's where your second floor floor plans might come into play. So right here are my second floor floor plans. I'm going to have to actually look at where the windows are, and I'm going to be drawing those in there and cutting them out on the second floor as well. So you're going to need to cut out the doors and windows on both the first floor and the second floor. This will probably take you a while. When you're ready to glue, the first thing I'm going to point out is that we're using an L shape, and what that's going to do is it's going to allow you to have a lot more control over the gluing. In class, typically we would be using mat board, but we're not because we just don't have the X-Acto knives to send home. So if we're at school, typically we would use that, but right now we're just going to use Bristol board and tacky glue. Tacky glue does take a little bit to dry, so I did give you do have tape. You can tape it temporarily while the tacky glue is drying, but I would just let it dry at the end of each day and then come back to it later. So for the tacky glue, I'm going to run a thin line all along where my paper needs to go. I'm avoiding putting glue where the doors are so my doors don't get glued down, but I'm running this whole line, and then I'm going to set my paper right on top and make sure it's stuck nice in the glue. And if you have to, sometimes I have to actually set up objects to hold it in place while it's drying. So if you don't tape it, you might have to set up some objects to hold it in place while it dries. And the tacky glue will actually dry clear. Keep your walls supported while you wait for your glue to dry fully, and you should be good to go, and remove the tape after.